Ladies and gentlemen, Azizaneman, I am here again in the Soldier Speaks exclusive in a series where I'm bringing to you voices of dissent from the UK in particular. Well, they are not voices of dissent, they are the voices of reason. And today we've got Matt O'Brennan with us. Hello, Matt. How are you? Thank you for joining in. So, before Matt introduces himself as a Kiwi musician, a media artist, and a Assange activist, but I believe Matt is a voice of dissent and a voice of reason. But we'll welcome Matt to this program, and we'll ask Matt himself to introduce. We'll ask Matt to introduce himself in his own words. Welcome to the program. Welcome to Soldier Speaks exclusive, Matt. How are you? And how would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks so much. Yeah, pleasure to be on here and speak to your audience. We met here on a radio station here in Bristol, and the struggle for freedom is a global struggle. And you being from Pakistan, I'm very conscious that we have Imran Khan in prison there in solitary confinement. This is completely abhorrent, and you know. The most popular politician in Pakistan's history, arguably, absolute disgrace to all standards of democracy, that he is imprisoned, and we must free him. And I campaigned to free Julian Assange. Similar reasons, he's standing up for the people, and he's in jail. We cannot allow this, and we need to use peaceful solidarity to achieve these means. So that's my philosophy on achieving justice, is using nonviolence, solidarity, because generally people are good. People want justice and peace. So we just need to be organized, and we need to work together to achieve it.
So, Matt, what has been your journey like so far? I mean, we met at Tony Gosling's radio show in Bristol. I traveled from to Bristol, and that was our first introduction. And you struck me as a voice of reason, and voices of reason are the voices of dissent. And
Yeah,
voices of dissent, I believe, are not allowed to
unfortunately.
be aired on mainstream media, uh, which is also called the legacy media now. So that is why, thankfully, we've got our own platforms like the radio show we had we've got with Tony Gosling. That's a very important platform. So,
Yeah.
what has been your journey like, and how did you reach at this point to become a voice of dissent, voice of reason, of course, but the voice of dissent? What has
Yeah.
been the journey like?
Yeah, great. So I love what you say about the legacy media, and the fact that we now have platforms like yourself. It's so wonderful to see that voices outside of the mainstream can now, in fact, become the mainstream. Um, Someone like Joe Rogan rates higher than CNN now. Now, regardless of what you think of Joe Rogan, it doesn't really matter. The point is that now someone could grab a camera and a microphone, an internet connection, and away you go. If you do something that speaks to an audience, you can have a chance, and you don't need to be on these millionaire platforms. Of course, we need to be mindful. Are we only sharing on millionaires' social media platforms? That's another question. But to your other question, how did I get involved in being active in the struggles for freedom? Um, Funnily enough, it was because of social media. A friend of mine changed his profile picture to a photo of Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, who was imprisoned in the UK. I hope your listeners know about it. I'm sure many of them do. If you
Yeah,
don't, look
oh
him up.
yeah. Julian
There you
Assange is
go.
a household name. Everybody knows him.
Yes, and for good reason. So, and I mean, even here in the UK, I still meet people who sometimes don't know him. So, um, but anyway, I saw this picture keeping on coming up on my friend's profile on Facebook, and it kept reminding me, like, because back then, this was back in about 2019, maybe 2020. Even I wasn't very familiar. I knew vaguely of Julian Assange, but I did not know the details. I knew he was in the embassy, and then next thing you know, he's in a police van going to prison. And then, hold on, what's going on here? So finally, I decided to research it.
Mhm.
And At that time, I was not really following the media because I didn't really trust it anyway. And I was right to not trust it, but we need some news. And, now I've learned that there are good journalists you can follow. Someone like yourself, there's, many voices, as you say, voices of conscience and reason. And so it's up to us to determine who those are and follow those. But I did some research and I found an incredible voice of reason and justice in the UN Special Rapporteur. Some of you may be familiar with Francesca Albanese, the fantastic UN Special Rapporteur for Palestine, who's done such great work. There are others, and the UN Special Rapporteur for Torture in 2020 was Niels Meltzer, and he investigated and reported on the Assange case. And what he found shocked him to his core. He did not expect to find what he found. And if you want to read his report, it's the best I can recommend about Assange. There's an article he wrote called A Murderous System is Being Created Before Our Eyes. It sounds like hyperbole or exaggeration. No. And we can see now the effects of this in Gaza. They really are this bold and daring to think that they can get away with these war crimes in daylight because, well, they succeeded in putting Julian Assange in jail, not for committing war crimes, but for exposing them, for
Yeah.
publishing evidence of them in conjunction with the five major newspapers in the world: The Guardian, The New York Times, Der Spiegel, El Pai, and Le Monde. Five biggest newspapers. They worked on those releases with him here in London and the UK. There's even video of it on YouTube. They're working together. Next thing you know, Julian Assange is being first they smeared him, of course, and then eventually prosecuted him for receiving and publishing classified information. However, it was classified information of state crimes, which is not supposed to be classified, and that's supposed to be a protected act under the First Amendment. So we're getting straight into your question now as well about, do we have freedom of speech in the West? No. Unfortunately, the Assange case has stepped over that line. For the first time, the US and the UK have been mostly technically democracies, but of course they do naughty things in the dark. The Assange case showed that when you expose things properly, like WikiLeaks did, they have to react. Unfortunately, so they have a choice: either stop causing so much harm and doing so many crimes, or they have to abandon democracy and become autocracies, censoring, and that's unfortunately the route that they are choosing. It's not too late; they can come back, but for now, no. The Assange case means that they can jail you for publishing evidence of state crimes, even in England, by the US. It's a complete sham. So yeah, it's tragic, but this is
Yeah.
what we
So
have to work with.
yeah, so that was a question I asked you in the studio before we started the program, but thank you for
Yeah,
answering it.
sorry.
I had to
Yeah,
come to it later. No worries. But
yeah,
before
we'll
we
come
go
back.
to the brass tacks, Matt,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a bit, a personal question about your personal journey. Being a
Right.
Kiwi musician from New Zealand, how did
Yeah.
you ended up in the United Kingdom? We understand your motivation to become an activist, and you're working as a journalist as well now, as
Mm,
that's where we've been introduced. But
mm.
what were your motivations to move all the way from from New Zealand, settle in the United Kingdom, and doing what you're doing? What the motivations and what's the background story to it? Just so that the audience can actually relate a bit better, because we are going to move to some serious topics after this. Please.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm too keen. I always want to jump right into the deep end. But thank you. No, for the audience, my story. Yeah, a lot of people ask me all the time, why did you leave New Zealand? You're crazy. It's a beautiful country, which it absolutely is. It's all true what they say about New Zealand. It's beautiful. Um, but it's small and it's isolated, which makes it wonderful. But it also means that it's difficult if you want to travel, if you want to connect with many people and collaborate. It's challenging. But the real reason that I left was Julian Assange,
Okay.
and So, I researched the case. I got immediately decided I'm going to do whatever I can to free this man and stop this, because this is a threat to Western democracy. This is a threat to the whole world, because if the empire can commit war crimes wherever they like and then punish the journalists, nobody is safe. So I was determined. I'm going to do everything I can until that man is free. And that's what I did for the next 5 years. So I left New Zealand after, one thing I did is I wore an orange Guantanamo Bay style jumpsuit. Every day I left the house, even if I'm going to the supermarket, the cinema, everywhere. And I had a prisoner sign, like a mugshot they held up with the prisoner number of Julian Assange's actual number and saying free Assange. And people would come up to me and ask me, why are you, wearing this in the supermarket? And I could tell them. So every time I went out, I would have, 5 or 10 conversations. And, maybe it goes nowhere, but sometimes people would research and they would become supporters. So it can help. But I also inspired a human chain. I did a tweet and it blew up. So again, the power of social media, anyone can become a voice. And this tweet went viral that I suggested we do a solidarity, a human chain around Julian's prison in London, it's a horrible maximum security prison. And I realized they're depriving him of love and connection. And it's psychological torture. You imagine you're in a dark room 24 hours of the day, not allowed to speak to anybody.
Imran Khan is facing all that in
Yeah.
Pakistan right now, at the hands of the military junta, at the hands of the military dictator Asim Munir. So I know what you're talking about. Each and every Pakistani knows what you're talking about, and our larger audience do understand what you're talking about.
Exactly. It's so abhorrent. And the poor man. So just pray for him. I'm sure, I know Imran Khan is strong, but nobody should have to be tested like this. And thank goodness we have a beacon of shining lights at the end of the tunnel. We did free Julian Assange, so there is reason to be hopeful. That doesn't mean that will happen by magic. You have to work with your hands and and your minds and your hearts. And but it's absolutely possible. Do not get lost in despair. So yeah, I think of Imran Khan often and want to.
That's great. So there's no free lunch. You if you want it, you got to go get it. That's what you were doing the other day. I would say contacted you. So there's a lot of videos by you on your socials as well. Very interesting videos. The way you put across the things, they make a lot of sense. You're not, you know how to put across your point of view. That is important, Matt. And then you were there at this protest in support of Palestine. I was also there covering for the National Union of Journalists, the slain journalist in Gaza. More than 200, almost 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza by the Israeli forces in the last 22 months. So there was a vigil for them in front of the Downing Street. I see you in the UK as well. Sorry, in London as well. And you're talking to Met Police, as we can see. So there is a lot going on. I understand that.
Yeah, that's right. And one of those videos just blew up on TikTok last night. I know you have 1 million followers, so this is nothing for you. But for me, that was quite good. I got 700,000 views on my video yesterday, where, yes, I was interrogating the police a little bit, gently having fun, but showing the hypocrisy. And what I did was I actually I said, okay, it's a crime to say I oppose genocide. What happens if I say I support genocide and I support bombing babies? So I did that. I stand next to them and I say, hey, let's bomb the babies. Let's commit genocide. Let's stop the peaceful protest. And they just allowed me to say this while they are arresting people for saying I oppose genocide. So the hypocrisy, people on TikTok were reacting to this and they could understand my point. It's not a good look. It's not a good look for Western democracy here.
So just for the context, let the audience listen to what was actually going on. We can show them.
Mr. Oppressor, you are standing with the baby killers.
Genocide is the ultimate crime. You're upholding the ultimate crime. You're stopping. I support bombing babies. It's okay to say that. I support bombing babies. Right, guys? It's not a crime to say that, right? Stasi were ready to arrest peaceful protesters against the genocide.
So that's what you're saying, actually. I support bombing babies, and that I was allowed to say well, that's an interesting way to protest, of course, in the current environment where even for saying what you're saying, even the saying the right things, you get into trouble. But yeah, you're right. But on a serious note, Matt, do you believe that the UK, like the Prime Minister, like Keir Starmer, announced that they are going to, in September, the coming month, I believe, he said that we are going to accept the Palestinian state. Do you think that's going to happen? Because my question to you is, I was in the parliamentary committee meeting where Mr. McDonald was, Right Honourable MP, Mr. John McDonald was chairing that meeting, and he said that if we that is the first step to accepting the Palestinian state, but they're not going to do that. That's what he said. Why they're not going to do that? Because if they will accept a Palestinian state, then the people who are going and fighting with the Israeli forces would be, punishable in the British courts for fighting against in a foreign country for an ally. So they're not going to do that. But what is your opinion on this particular point of view?
And can I ask? I wasn't there. That's great to get that. Was he talking about Secret Armed Services UK currently in Gaza, which I understand is happening, although not reported
he was
very
talking
well?
about everyone fighting alongside the Israeli forces, because if it was his point, because I asked him a specific question in this closed door parliamentary meeting, and he's the head of the National Union of Journalists parliamentary group. So we were invited in this meeting, and I asked him that the UK's strategic community's point of view is that if you have to, prioritize supporting Israel because it is our strategic concern. It benefits our security. It is a strategic priority, and for doing that, you have to compromise on certain freedoms. There was, and I was referring to a briefing I attended regarding this particular topic in King's College London not very long ago. It was last month, I suppose. So I quoted that, and there were a lot of the brilliant minds of the strategic community of UK were sitting there. And then there was another meeting in the Whitehall. I was referring to that as well. I covered that as well. I was invited there. So I referenced to that argument by the strategic community that in order to prioritize your strategic interest in an ever-changing world, you have to compromise your freedoms, like the freedom of speech. So under the circumstances, what is the way forward? I asked him, and he said the way forward is only to accept Palestine. But in the same breath, he said that they're not going to do that. Why? Because the people who are fighting alongside the Israeli forces could be taken to the courts for war crimes or whatever in the UK. So they're not going to do that. That was his point of view. And then later on, Keir Starmer said that we are going to accept the Palestinian state. Now, my question to you is whether they're going to do that or not, because there are two opposing points from Mr. John McDonnell, who's another voice of dissent sitting in them as the member of parliament, and a Labour. A good man, definitely a good man.
He spoke up for a time. That's my test. If they spoke up for Julian Assange, that's a huge test passed, for journalists, for politicians. No,
so
I see what you're saying.
Do you think the UK is going to accept the Palestinian state or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the question is, do they intend to? And I would say unlikely, as you've put there, and that's a very good reason. They're flying spy flights over Gaza every day the last 2 years. Again, not well reported, but except by Matt Kennard, the Palestine Deep Dive, incredible investigative journalists here in the UK. If everyone, I suggest follow Matt Kennard and Palestine Deep Dive. They've reported on those spy flights, collecting data over Gaza every day and sending it in real time. This has been confirmed even by the Ministry of Defense, that it's real-time data, and it could be being used and of course it is being used. They say to target Hamas, but we know what target Hamas looks like. We can see the aerial views of Gaza. They are not targeting anything but leveling the entire place, right? So this means that the UK has been directly collaborating with, not only complicit, but actively participating in this genocide. The scholars now, the consensus is it's a genocide. So we can call it this. We can see it with our own eyes. We don't need an expert. And it's
Yeah. So,
shocking.
Matt, what do you say? I know that's the voice of dissent there.
Mm,
But what do you say to the counter argument, which I've just
mm,
presented to you, which comes
mm,
from the strategic community of the UK, saying that we
mm.
need the strategic leverage and the strategic influence which we get from supporting Israel because the US is supporting Israel, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we need that leverage, and we need to
Mm,
stay in the game. And we need why do we need that? They say we need that to make good business deals after Brexit,
mm.
for running our economy and keeping it relevant, and to
Yeah.
stay relevant. So that is the counter argument, and I know that's the
Yeah.
devil's. I'm being
Yeah.
the devil's
Yeah.
advocate over
No, I
here. All
understand.
right.
Absolutely.
So what do you
No.
say to that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly. What can you say to that? I think that if the cost of your uh and really it's not survival, it is dominance. They want to preserve economic dominance, which is they've already lost, actually. Technically, the BRICS consortium of nations now has a bigger combined wealth in terms of GDP than the G7. So we actually already have had a global power shift in terms of economics. So they are desperate, and not enough people are talking about this. It's a very good question you've brought up. They are not saying it because it would sound completely disgusting and unreasonable, really. Say, well, we need those for our economic interests. It's blood money, isn't it? They're shedding millions of, hundreds of thousands of people's blood so they can get, yes, there is natural gas off the coast of Gaza. And, Rishi Sunak's wife has shares in this, and yes, the idea of the greater Israel, of course. One US politician who unfortunately, he's a very good politician, but except on Israel, which is quite common. But he said that this is RFK Jr. He said Israel is like a battle, an aircraft carrier for us in the Middle East. I'm like, oh, he just said exactly what it is. We know this, people that are paying attention. Yeah, it's an aircraft carrier for them. It's a military outpost, a way to conquer and control. And he said, we don't want Russia and China getting the gas and the oil in the Middle East. And really what he's saying is that, yeah, they're already dominating us economically. And if we allow them to come in and make deals across the Middle East, we will be in big trouble, which BRICS has shown a willingness to do, is to stop trading in the US dollar, the petrodollar. And so they want to control that area. And it just all comes back to resources and colonial domination, doesn't it? There's the oil here. Oh, suddenly the US has to fight for democracy in Iraq. And we just happen to find all of this oil. How convenient. Ukraine, I asked Grok AI, I like to talk to Grok AI and other AIs sometimes to give some reference. I said, what is the most resource rich area in Eastern Europe? In one word, Ukraine. Is this a coincidence? I know we're going to come back to Ukraine. So, I mean, what is the answer to your question? I think we need to be boldly asking this question more because it's not being discussed. And I just feel there has to be another answer, because if the answer is, if the only way to survive is to commit genocide, you have to question whether that thing, whether it's a state or a company or whatever it is, should survive.
So I think to be fair, the
Mm,
counter argument which you are putting forward is that the strategic community needs to be told that you have to balance out and you have to, analyze the cost and benefit analysis between using brute force by supporting Israel or and gaining the leverage which you seek, or through the soft power. I mean, English language soft power will always stay relevant for you. You'll always have
yeah,
that kind of, but then there, the US as well, there also speaks English. But at the
yeah,
same time, the soft power leverage
yeah.
can give you far-reaching, benefits if you compare it with brute force. So that's a debate of another
Brilliant.
time.
No,
We were
you're
talking
exactly
about.
right.
Yeah,
That's exactly what it is. They are
yeah,
sacrificing their soft power, which
yeah,
is really the most sustainable, the most powerful. The US has gotten away with literal murder for the last, sort of 80 years or so, because they have branded themselves quite successfully as flying the flag of freedom. If you say, what is the one word that we are told to think about United States, it's freedom. But
yeah.
actually, if you peer behind the curtain, it's not what it is. It's unfortunately, it's certainly in terms of foreign policy, it's their version of democracy is give us what we want, or you're going to get it. And of course, the US backed the coup against Imran Khan, for example. And I noticed that Pakistani leadership has just cut a deal with Trump for some oil. So, what a convenient thing, not a
Yeah,
coincidence.
but that's I think that's for the public relationing purposes, because on ground Pakistan is buying oil from the US, and they're saying we'll dig oil in Pakistan, whereas Pakistan is buying oil from the US. And the Pakistani leadership is effectively Pakistani dictators, the military dictators, who do not enjoy the public mandate. So
Mm,
obviously they don't want somebody as independent as Imran Khan. That's why the regime change against Imran Khan was supported by the US. It's now on record.
mm,
And the Pakistani military played the pivotal role, as always, in facilitating the US. In fact, the idea was floated to the US by the Pakistani military. So that is an interesting debate. But
it's
going to
interesting.
Ukraine,
No, thanks for
Ukraine
that.
is yeah, Ukraine has got a resource curse right now. That is what
Mm,
Pakistan is facing as well. Pakistan's largest province, 44% of its land mass is Balochistan. There is a military operation going on there right now. There is no internet access to half of the country. That is Balochistan, the province of Balochistan. There's an insurgency going on. There are casualties on daily basis, and that area is resource rich. It's got gold, it's got critical minerals. The
mm,
Chinese are in there. Now, I'm leading this to my next question. The
mm,
Chinese are involved in there. The Pakistani military wants to, suck in the Americans in that area so that they can profit off the profit of the superpower rivalry. And they've always
mm,
been doing that. They've done that between the USSR and the USA, and then now they're doing it between China and the USA. So they're
right.
representing their own country as the battleground for superpowers. And of course, there are casualties, there are collateral damage, but they accept it till the time the Pakistani generals are profiting out of it. As for the general public, for 250 million people, well, they're not people to them; they're sheeple to them.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
as sheeps. They're being used. You do understand the term from being a Kiwi, right? So they're
Yeah,
using
right.
so they're using that.
Exactly.
So the question is that there is, without doubt, the new Cold War, right?
Mm,
Been going on. Today I've started reading this book about the new Cold War. It's a very interesting book by Gilbert Achcar. So I'll give you an analysis later on. But the
mm.
new Cold War is in between the United States, Russia, and China, from Kosovo to Ukraine, and now to Pakistan as well. Who do you think is winning this Cold War, by the way?
It's interesting. I think that BRICS, Russia and China and India and everyone else in BRICS, is actually winning. They're standing back. They say, there's a saying that don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. Now, I would actually like some countries to interrupt what is happening, for example, in Gaza, with a peacekeeping force, but there's also something to be said that they are just watching as the US and the UK, as you say, are sacrificing their soft power, which to me is the strongest power. Tyrannies do not last. They yes, for a while, but eventually people get sick of it and they smash it down. They find a way. Maybe we are walking into a new dangerous time where tyranny has a chance to succeed for the first time in human history. They're taking a huge gamble, but there is an awful lot of technology at their disposal now, and they might succeed. We might end up in a complete tyranny, but I don't think so. I think the human heart is too rebellious and too smart for that, and the small group of people that wants to control everybody, they always end up. I'm sorry, it doesn't go well. Look at the history books. I'm not trying to threaten anything here, but it doesn't go well, does it, if you know your history? So you don't want to sacrifice that integrity, the respect, that the US and UK, maybe they don't even actually deserve it, but they have achieved it. Now they are selling it. They think they can get away with it. I call it like the emperor's new clothes. The story of the emperor's new clothes. They're walking around completely naked. They think that they're clothes we can see on our phones. No, you are
That's
committing a genocide.
That's a old story narrated by my friend journalist Arshad Sharif, who's assassinated in Kenya by the Pakistani military regime, and during the strategic lawsuit against public participation by the ISI official, the Pakistani intelligence official, against me in the Royal Court of Justice last month, that the Arshad Sharif case was also brought to light, and he in Urdu we say Badshah Nanga hai, the king is naked. So the king is naked, you're right, everybody can see it, but if you conclude your point, then I'll come to the next.
Yeah, I don't know what they're thinking, except maybe I do, because maybe their intention is, we don't care. We will use censorship, tyranny, violence. There's a very serious danger of all of that coming upon us. People think they can be silent on Gaza, on Imran Khan, whatever it is. No, you can't, because what they can do over there, they will eventually do here. And they already are bringing in these measures like the Online Safety Act. You have to use a digital government. You have to use a government ID to access Wikipedia. This is bizarre. No, this is not good. It's very dangerous.
So we are heading towards a regulated world, and this was an argument we used against countries like China, for example, to and we still use it against countries like BRICS. You were mentioning BRICS. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So these countries, if they do work together, they've got the potential to win over the G7. But right now, there is another interesting aspect. Let me put that across to you. The countries like G7, or let's say the European or the US-led Western Alliance, they've got shared values, a lot of them. BRICS, right now, as it stands today, there aren't many shared values other than monetary gains, all right? Making a singular currency, maybe. With President Trump, annoying Indians, it is a possibility now that BRICS may work in future, but I'm sure they've got counter strategy in place. As of now, the US-led West is way ahead, frankly and honestly. Why I say this? Because the great power rivalry right now, the principal rivals are China and the US. And the Russians are only watching. Yes, they are fighting the West in Ukraine. And President Trump is, and that is where we're heading. President Trump seems desperate to strike a deal. And in that connection, what is your reading? Doesn't he sound really desperate to strike a deal? And if he does strike a deal, and Russia, they have to give some space. They have to give landmass to the Russians, and if they do give it, all right, that's a specialist subject, and I've got Theo Mullis coming over tomorrow to discuss that with me. But
Right.
as a whole, from a Western perspective, from an independent perspective, from the perspective of a thinking mind, from the perspective of a dissident, what do you think about the Putin-Trump meeting? In this context, let me clarify one point as well, that if China and US, they are fighting amongst each other, and Pakistanis are providing that battleground once again, like they provided to the USSR and the US. So it looks like that the great power rivalry is again going to be decided in South Asia and Central Asia. And if that is going to be the case, then the Russians are quite happy with it, because they want the Chinese. That's an argument that they want Chinese and the Americans to fight it out, while they're there to uh, go and just cash upon the spoils in the Europe as well. So in that context, how important is the Putin-Trump meeting, and what are your impressions of it?
Yeah, so I mean, if you follow Western legacy media, a lot of people I know who would align with the left or human rights, unfortunately, they're convinced that Ukraine is a fight for freedom and democracy. It's not that simple, as any proxy and military intervention involving the West has been. They always sell this as one thing when actually it's completely just the same old colonialism and grabbing resources and power, isn't it? And so that's how I see that. And don't take it from me, like people like Jeffrey Sachs, who was the US's economic envoy to USSR at the time when it was dissolving. He is a great voice of reason too. I highly recommend following him, Jeffrey Sachs. And he says in no uncertain terms that this is a proxy colonial project, that Russia showed the best intentions to make a reasonable deal with Ukraine. That I understand even the delegate of ambassadors from Ukraine originally celebrated with champagne. They thought, this is such a good deal we've gotten. Then, we hear that, if you followed good journalists, as I began to do once I started campaigning for Assange, I started to see the truth coming through. And, okay, so it's Boris Johnson coming over. And this was on record from the Prime Minister of what is it? I've got it here. Belarus, Lukashenko, and he said that Boris Johnson forced Zelensky not to sign the peace agreement that they had with Russia, and this came from Washington most likely, and what's happened instead of Russia having a deal that the Ukrainian delegates were celebrating with champagne? Well, now they have a deal with the US. Now BlackRock has substantial portions of Ukraine already, I understand, under contract to rebuild. And, there's lots of resources there, as you point out. So, I mean, what's going to happen in terms of Trump's deal? I can't claim to know what Trump's motivation is, but I personally appreciate for whatever reason, really, although I'm interested in what his reasons are, he's campaigned saying that he's against the war in Ukraine. He wants the violence and the killing to stop. There has been reports that it's could be 1 million dead in terms of entire casualties on both sides, military and civilian. That's a lot of people, 1 million people to die. Trump says that it never would have happened if he was elected in 2020, and he promised to stop it when he came in. And some would say, "Oh, he hasn't stopped it." Well, I think he's done all he can to stop it. He's stopped supplying the weapons. He even rebuked very forcefully Zelensky in quite an unprecedented way in front of the media. Frankly, I'm afraid some people were disgusted by that. I'm afraid I was relieved, because he was saying, look, you're going to cause World War III. And that's true, they were. The doomsday clock literally moved closer to midnight. That's the nuclear doomsday clock from atomic scientists has been upheld since Hiroshima, Nagasaki, I believe. And it's the closest to midnight it's ever been since Biden's term. And so, because they were pulling in Russia into this conflict, and they're supplying weapons, depleted uranium weapons, all the red lines. And there's even, was it the CIA, former CIA director, William Burns, in 2008 said that a decision, that the idea of Ukraine joining NATO was a decision Russia does not want to face. Yeah. Meaning it would spur up all kinds of things, threatening the security of Russia. Even there's a clip of Joe Biden saying it in about 2010, that if there ever was a red line for Russia, it's Ukrainian membership of NATO. So why did they then try to encourage Ukraine to seek NATO membership? And even more bizarrely, knowing that they didn't want to accept it. Putin, it seems to me that one of Putin's key demands was Ukraine does not join NATO. And it also seems quite well reported that actually US never had intention to allow Ukraine to join NATO. And it also seems quite clear that they didn't want to say that they didn't want Ukraine to join NATO. There's only one, the mind boggles, but there's actually only one logical conclusion from that. They wanted Russia to invade Ukraine. Why? Well, suddenly they can bomb the Nord Stream pipeline, allegedly, which would have been very beneficial for both Europe and Russia economically. And instead, what do we have? The US has a deal selling gas, liquid, in liquid form, shipping it across the ocean instead of a gas pipeline, which would have been so much more effective and cheap. And I was living in Berlin as this happened, and the gas prices, the heating prices for ordinary people, they were telling me it's gone up 10 times, 8 to 10 times since last year. So this is the cost of this colonialism, this barbarism, using violence and sort of censorship and manipulating the media. They think they can get away with it. No, they got to change. You either have to become a proper tyranny, locking people down, drones, surveillance, complete censorship, or you have to start behaving better because the spotlight is on you. And I think we have to find other ways to be economically successful and sustainable that don't involve murdering millions of people constantly. I mean, the US has been involved in bombing for all but 16 years of its existence. This is not tenable under the connected world that we are in now with the internet. Here I have a webcam and a microphone, and we can talk and share these important ideas and discuss these for listeners around the world. I think it's wonderful. And we have to, as long as we keep this, we have a real chance of justice and a world that actually works and doesn't have to involve violence. I just know, I can't tell you, I'm not the expert to sit and say, this is what the US and UK need to do to be economically sustainable and secure. That doesn't involve murdering people for oil. But I just am hopeful enough that if we put our minds together, maybe we can find a better way than murdering lots of people. I mean, China's done it. They haven't been invading and bombing people. They haven't invaded another continent in its entire 5,000-year history, and they're doing very well economically. Maybe we could learn something from them. I'm not saying we have to copy them completely, but they're doing something.
But for how long? That's the million-dollar question. Yep. How long can you only use your economic power and the model, the so-called development model for neo-colonization? Well, that is a debatable point. But
it is.
Matt, let me present to you a widely accepted realpolitik point of view right now. For this, I'll just display this world map. All right. So here we go. Here's the world map. So if you now, this is you need to understand. The future of the future of the world right now, the future energy of the world right now, it is in the Pacific Ocean because of the melting seas, because of the global warming. The seas are melting, and you will find energy resources like never before in the Pacific. And the Pacific is being controlled by two global powers, that's Russia and the United States. So they don't really need Europe in this context to control the future of energy resources. So they're going to decide amongst themselves. And if they're going to decide amongst themselves about the Pacific Ocean, so they're going to, decide about the resources of Ukraine as well, because at the end of the day, Ukraine is about the resources or the resource curse for the Ukrainians. We are talking realpolitik over here. So where does that leave Europe, and where does that leave the United Kingdom? That is my question to you, Matt.
That's very interesting. It's certainly, I've been conscious of how interested, because I've been in New Zealand. I have seen this playing out over the last few years, that the US has a much more heightened interest currently in the Pacific. That's absolutely true. I'm very interested in what you're saying. This is the first I've actually heard someone say that you believe that there is more resources there. Can you speak more about that? What sort of resources are you seeing in the
So
Pacific?
it's basically in the Pacific. It's a known fact now, established fact, that there are oil and gas reserves there in the Pacific, and because of the melting seas, the race of the world, entire world, is to capture and conquer those resources there, because there are more revenues, more energy avenues coming up, and as per the geological surveys, they are easily accessible as well in the Pacific
Right.
Ocean. They've never been explored before. And
Right.
so that is, I mean,
See.
energy is the future of the world, isn't it? And
Very.
that's where the big money is. So we know that we want to convert the fossil fuels. We want to, move away from fossil fuels into the clean energy or green energy. But once you've got the U.S. President saying "drill, baby, drill, drill, baby, drill," it tells you that what the big mega corporations like BlackRock and the rest of them are thinking to make profit. And at the end of the day, it is about money. And we are talking realpolitik over here. So where does that leave Europe even, Is that why they're worried that they're not even invited to the Trump-Putin meet?
Yeah, it's a very good question. What does Europe really have to gain from following the US line like they have been? It doesn't seem good, certainly not for ordinary citizens. And I would say, and looping back to the other point, will China, it's a very good question, once they have the economic strength and power and influence in the world, will they become as violent and tyrannical as a US empire or a UK empire was? It's a very important question. I tend to think there is a chance that because not simply because of history, but actually because of the technology that we have, the information age. I am a strong believer, actually, as long as we do not lose our right to freedom of speech, or we don't surrender it, the light is too strong in the information age. Like I say, there is the power for them to become more tyrannical and censor us more, but we also have the technology to do the opposite. And I tend to think we're going to win that battle, and that nations that do uphold the rule of law, that do not commit genocides, will be more successful. And I'm not saying it's going to be an easy shift, but that's what's happening. It's even sad for me growing up in the West and thinking America was a great place. I love NBA basketball. It's one of my favorite things to follow. When I'm not following politics, I'm searching NBA basketball. But I'm very sad to think that these countries that we thought were about freedom, actually they're not. So, but that's the case. And now I don't buy Coca-Cola, and I don't go to McDonald's, and I don't go to Burger King anymore. And a lot of people are doing the same. And until they start to behave. And I'm much more. I want to buy Gaza Cola. You know, I have some right here. In fact, it's the Gaza Cola brand. I don't know if you know this one, and yeah, but in the UK, and there are other ones too. So that's, you know, one way we can make impact, of course. But coming back to Europe and this, yeah, I don't know. I don't know as much about as you have uncovered about these resources, but I can certainly see. I do not believe that Europe is benefiting from this relationship with the US. I think it's a small number, of course, of people that are in the short term profiting from these fossil fuels, from these colonial invasions, but it's very short-sighted. It's very unwise for you know, losing the integrity. I think it's very costly in the long run. But I think that people behind the scenes, like the central banks pulling the strings, probably don't care because they don't think that's going to come back to them. But they probably see the end might be nigh for them too. Cryptocurrency might replace these central banks. And so maybe they're just trying to get what they can as the ship is sinking too. But certainly they are trying to squeeze the Pacific. Australia is very much captured, although they were able to push back a little bit on and getting Julian Assange back, but that took a lot of grassroots struggle over 13 years. Eventually, the public opinion was so high for Assange, 90%, that they had to give in. And
that's my final question to you, in fact, Matt,
right.
before we conclude that. What's the future of freedom of speech in the UK and rest of the world after the Julian Assange episode in particular? The way he's been persecuted, and the way the laws in the UK, like the libel laws in particular, the way lawfare is being launched for strategic lawsuit against public participation in the UK. What is the future of freedom of speech in this day and age in the UK and rest of the world?
Great question. Such an important question. To me, it's the most important question of all, because whatever is going on in the world at the minute, whether it's a genocide in Gaza or in Sudan, as is happening, or it's pollution or global warming, or economic, whatever it is, if you're not allowed to know about it, you can't solve the problem, you know. So we must preserve freedom of information and freedom of speech. It's the master key to all of our other rights. If we lose that key, none of our other rights are safe. So and it's absolutely under threat. Most people are starting to see it, but actually not everyone quite realizes how far we are down that road. The Assange case was the most significant step beyond, over that line against freedom of speech into tyranny. Technically, we have stepped over that line with the Assange case, and it's terrifying. That's why I spent 5 years, when I had much things I'd rather do. You know, I was just ordinary. I was a teacher. I was a musician. I became an activist about this because it's threatened everything. And we need to solve that. So, because even though Julian was freed, which is a very huge win, and because they wanted to put him in a dungeon forever, and we stopped that. However, we didn't win yet, because they made him plead guilty to what he did, which was journalism, award-winning journalism. As I mentioned, with all the 5 major newspapers, he published evidence of war crimes. He did it with integrity. He censored things he should. And this is criminalized journalism. This is criminalized revealing state crimes. That is the biggest threat to freedom and freedom and democracy that we have had here in the UK and in the West. I would say, arguably since the Enlightenment. I can't think of a case where it's like, oh, here's an Australian working in Europe, publishing evidence of United States horrific war crimes, illegal invasions, killing millions of people, and torture. That's a crime, and we're going to stick him and we're going to torture him in front of full view of everybody. So it's really bad. We are on the wrong side. What is the future? We have 2 options. One, we managed to win. We managed to undo that precedent, the Assange precedent, and other ones that are going on too. There are others, of course, but this is the top. we need to protect journalists against extradition to the United States. We need to get a public interest defense into the Official Secrets Act in the UK, and we need to get a public interest defense, or I like to say we need to burn the Espionage Act. We could reform it, but burn has a nice catch to it. And they've used that to go after Snowden, Chelsea Manning, the whistleblowers who revealed all of these war crimes, and then the publisher, Julian Assange. And the public interest defense means they're not allowed to say what they published or why. So the jury will never understand what they did, and they will just, well, they're just a traitor, they're just a spy. No, let the jury hear what they published and why. Snowden said he will face a jury if he's allowed to. So the Espionage Act is the one they use. That's the danger. But so either we successfully reform, but there's actually another alternative. So that's one. We reform the laws and we get back to some sensible laws that protect the First Amendment in the US and freedom of speech in Europe. Or we don't worry anymore about states and laws trying to silence us. I mean, I suggest we do both of these, but the alternative is we use systems.
What's the price? There's a price to be paid for not worrying about it.
Oh, no, exactly. So just to clarify, I suggest we do both. But the second option, and we should worry and we should try and win that battle, and I think we can. But the second one, just in case we can't, is to use systems that do not require permission from the government. We need to use systems that cannot be censored and that cannot be surveilled, and they already exist. So the technology, this is the wonderful thing. We live in this time now, and we don't just have this technology to communicate. We also have encryption, and we know how to use decentralized servers. It's the same principle that blockchain is, that cryptocurrency is based on, the blockchain, which is a whole lot of decentralized networks connected together so that not one network can be shut down or censored. This is very hopeful. This means that we can, and we already do have actually, options like Mastodon and Nostr as decentralized social media networks where we can share information without being any possibility of being censored. Like, even if they want to, they cannot censor it. They cannot shut down these decentralized.
You're talking about print media, right? You're talking about print media.
No, this is online. This is online. So,
like if I'm putting out a video on these networks and they can't be taken down, all right. Like the legacy media, even YouTube is the biggest censorship program. Is right now. I'm an example. YouTube has banned me because the government went after me, and the National Union of Journalists have asked YouTube to, allow me to broadcast, but they're not allowing it. I'm allowed there spontaneously, but I'm not allowed to make my own channel, and that is an example, classic example of censorship because at the end of the day, it is business for them. It is not about freedom of speech for them. So you're giving these platforms for freedom of speech, fine. But if you're going to broadcast there on these platforms, what would happen? They can still come after. They cannot take down my broadcast, but they can come after me. Like the anti-terrorist the anti-terrorist police came after me here in the UK on the complaint of the Pakistani state because I was I am a whistleblower, and I was blowing the whistle a bit too hard, like Julian Assange. So the anti-terrorist case was launched against me, but I do give credit to the UK's establishment here that after 9 months they could find nothing, but it was 9 months of agony. I was arrested from my home in front of my children. Just imagine the impact. Right? Just imagine the impact. Wow. I was arrested. I was kept on bail for 9 months on the counterterrorism charges, which have got a very broad interpretation, mind you. Yeah. So there is a cost to be paid. They cannot take your broadcast down, fine, but they can come after you as a person, as an individual. Where are you going to hide? So in that context, what are you going to do about it? How can you decentralize and then at the same time monetize so you can make a living out of speaking truth to power? How can you do that? That is the question then.
Yes, that's right. Great question. I didn't know all of that. And were you detained in jail during the bail?
Yeah, no, I was left on bail
You're released
for
back.
nine
Yeah.
months. But I was
Yes.
my movements were restricted. I had
Right.
to, even if I had to leave the city for a single night, I had to get prior permission from the police. I had to tell them where I was going, where I was staying. I wasn't allowed to leave the country in any case, and there were
Mm,
very strict conditions on what I say and what I don't say. And initially, they
right.
wanted me to stop saying anything at all on social media, but thankfully, I had some excellent solicitors and the lawyers that they fought that out, and they said no, that's not on, because that's his bread
Yeah.
and butter. He's a journalist. But well, that all happened, and that is happening in the UK even,
Yeah.
so but so-called champion of freedom of speech. But
Yeah.
then under these circumstances, what hope have we got for journalism? What hope have we got for those speaking truth to power? uh, uh, Already UK is the libel tourism capital of the world. You can come if you've got 2-3 million pounds to spare. If you're a state, like in my case, it was the Foreign Intelligence Agency of Pakistan's official coming after me, spending all this money here in the UK just to silence me, just to punish me. That is what slap suits are all about. The strategic lawsuit against public participation are all about. So under these circumstances, what is the future of the freedom of speech?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, look at that. I mean, the way it shows so many things that they're censoring you, stopping you on YouTube, and then coming after you with the Terrorism Act. First of all, congratulations. This is the new Pulitzer Prize. If you have a Terrorism Act investigation as a journalist now, it's better than a Pulitzer Prize. I'm going to follow, I'm following people like you, Richard Medhurst, Craig Murray, Asa Winstanley, all these journalists, Click Clarenberg, have been arrested under these terrorism acts, uh, and this proves that they are good. So follow all of those journalists. You could just search who's been investigated or arrested under terrorism act charges in the UK. Those are the best journalists in the UK, and I'm not even joking. So yeah, it is horrific, and it's actually coming faster and faster. I think because of the genocide in Gaza in particular. And these questions we all need to grapple with. How are we going to maintain freedom of speech? It is the master key to all of our freedoms. And as I say, I think there are two ways we must advocate for law reform. In this sense, the battleground is electing a good administration. Our party, the Corbyn and Zara Sultana party, they have a huge membership, bigger than all the other parties combined. I think that's a good reason to be very hopeful. Of course, they're going to try and pull out every trick. We have to win this election in the UK. We have to. There is just too much at stake in the world right now. There's too much of a shift going on right now between freedom and democracy, techno-tyranny, all of these risks. We must win this next election. That means not hoping, not praying, but getting out on the street, campaigning for the party and for what laws we want them to bring in. I spoke to the challenger to the Green Party, Zach Polanski, at a media conference recently, and I asked him, what is he going to do about Julian Assange case precedent? Is he willing to look at tightening the extradition laws and the Official Secrets Act? And he said he would be willing to look at that. So it just goes to show you, I'm nobody special. I'm an ordinary citizen. I have started to research and then ask difficult questions at the right time. You can make a difference. Anybody out there, if you care, do not hang your head in despair. Get out there and take action. So that's advocating, getting involved. Don't just wait for the elections to come around and make your vote. No. That's just going to uphold the tyranny. You have to get out on the street and you have to work with each other, collaborate with other people, use your minds, and we can do this. And so that's one thing. So reforming these laws, putting back protections for journalists, strengthening the extradition laws, putting the Official Secrets Act, getting a public interest defense in there. And whenever they say we need to take away your freedoms in order to protect you, this is dangerous. So they say the online safety bill is to protect children. But watch out, they use these excuses. What has this got to do with Wikipedia? That I can't go and look at Wikipedia without an ID. or YouTube, and then they're censoring people like you on YouTube. So we need to actually get. But the other part of that is, so there's reforming the laws. The other part is adopting and promoting platforms that cannot be censored. So YouTube obviously can be. That's a centralized platform with a centralized server. TikTok, you notice they tried to ban that, and they said, "Oh, now let's just try to buy it, and we'll move the servers to the United States." Why? So they can censor it. So they can even soft censor it. The content that's Free Palestine, they're going to try to move it down. They're still failing. Very interesting, but they're trying. But there are platforms that they cannot censor. The technology exists, and that's Mastodon is one. And another one is Nostr, Nostr. It's a decentralized network, and you can have various apps, similar to your Instagrams, but they work on this Nostr protocol. One is the Primal app. I saw that recommended by Ian Carroll, who's a great independent, citizen journalist who does a lot of uncovering corruption. Some of you might know him. He recommended that one. So it's, to be honest, it's something I'm exploring, like which platform, because you also want a platform that you have an audience for. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter because that's where the audience is. But we need to shift that. We cannot only, so I myself am researching these and figuring out what is going to be the next, where should we move to? I think we just need to have this discussion now and decide what do we want in a social media platform, and then we need to embrace that collectively together. So we just need to talk about this now, do some research, but it needs to be decentralized. It cannot be on a server that the deep state or a company can surveil and censor. And so and the technology already exists, so we just need to choose which one is it going to be. There's another one called Matrix Protocol, which is apparently very good as well. So look into all of those. I suggest all your listeners, because Nostr, Mastodon, and Matrix, and they are the future. I don't think we should keep using billionaire tech platforms that we know are censoring people like you.
But in all fairness, Google did ban me. There's no doubt about it, and they continue doing that. And there is a political aspect involved in there. There is no doubt that's a business aspect involved in there as well. But the credit must be given where it's due. Once Elon Musk took over X, and I get like millions of views on X now, and the
Right.
main broadcasting platform for this interview is also going to be on X, and of course it'll be on Facebook as well. But Facebook is never going to monetize this content. X won't do that as well. But at least they're giving us a platform, and it has got a mass following. That is important. To reach the audience is important. All these platforms are platforms of the future. The youngsters are very well aware of these platforms, and they are going to adopt these platforms. But we're talking about now, right now, the existing platforms on social media which we've got. Well, YouTube is the biggest platform if you really want to make a living out of journalism, and they're not allowing you to do that because there is so much censorship. There are so many vague rules. Even on X right now, we're witnessing that the states, the accounts do get suspended, like parody accounts do get suspended. There are troll factories being run by state-sponsored troll factories, mass reporting content to bring down its circulation. So there's a logarithm manipulation, right? So definitely we need new platforms, but let's give credit where it's due. Let's give credit to Elon Musk at a great personal cost. He, carrying out this venture, and he's allowing.
I do agree. He's not a perfect character to me, but he's not the villain that everyone portrays him on the left. A lot of my friends back home, they're kind of convinced that he's the worst of the worst. No, I mean, he's still a billionaire tech guy. We should absolutely be absolutely critical of him and examine everything he's doing. But I would say he did more good. He did more good than harm when he bought Twitter, because they were censoring a lot of things, and he has reduced that. He hasn't solved it. There is still censorship going on Twitter that is worrying. to me, what exemplifies Elon Musk, I come back to, as I said earlier, my test for a journalist or a politician in this day and age. Search their history. Did they speak up for Julian Assange when he was rotting in Belmarsh prison for 5 years for telling the truth? If they didn't, you cannot trust them. For whatever reason, either they're not aware or they're cowards. Either way, you cannot trust them, or they're corrupt. One of those three. None of those are good excuses. Elon Musk shared a video explaining the case, and he said, "This is interesting." Now, he didn't come out and say, "Free Julian Assange," like he should, if he's really Mr. Free Speech. No, I'm sorry. So he doesn't give the title of Mr. Free Speech to me. But as you say, credit where it's due. When he took over, he at least shared that video and said, "Check this out. Let's hear someone else talking about this case and why it attacks the First Amendment." So that's good. And yeah, he revealed the Twitter files, which revealed this shocking complicity, shocking conspiracy between the deep state, which is the intelligence agencies, mainstream media, the New York Times and others, and social media, Facebook and Twitter, and the sitting administration in the US, the Democrats. And this has all been admitted by, if you think this is a conspiracy theory, no, this has been admitted in a letter by Mark Zuckerberg, an open letter, you can read it. He says that he was asked to censor true information leading up to the 2020 election, a very close election. Now, a lot of people have strong feelings about Trump. You may hate him, but you have to always stick to principles, and when you see a sitting administration working with the intelligence agencies, mainstream media, and social media to censor true information to manipulate an election, wow, you have to be very, very, very worried about that, no matter who the candidate is. So yeah, I am grateful actually to Elon Musk for what he did there, taking Twitter, and he has improved it. It's not perfect. It is. I don't think it's the trustworthy final solution for free speech.
Speaking of liberty, Matt, what about the Jeffrey Epstein file tweet that he did, and later he did delete it about Donald Trump?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, you don't know about that, do you?
No, I remember seeing that. What he said
he shared a video of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein and saying that the reason Jeffrey Epstein files weren't made public was because they had some references allegedly to Donald Trump himself.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's not surprising. I'm sure that I was skeptical about the Epstein files, but you see more and more what's happening on. I'm no longer skeptical. It's very clear what's going on. There's more and more evidence by the day about it. In terms of what it is, the name, people are obsessed about getting the names. I understand that. We do need to know that. But what's more important actually is that it exists at all. Why was this, quite clearly it's a sexual blackmail ring existing. I don't think it's so much that all of these politicians are pedophiles, and a lot of people get caught up in this. Oh, they're all kind of pedophiles. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that's quite unlikely. I think that's more closer to the truth that it was a clever, terrible blackmail operation where they tricked these politicians into sleeping with underage people that they didn't know, perhaps. I don't know, but this is my guess. And they capture them on camera, and then they say, "Hey, guess what? That girl or that boy was underage. You probably don't want this coming out." And so that's my Occam's razor. What's more likely?
It only makes, Matt. It only makes sense because that's how intelligence agencies operate. But they call it the honey trapping operation, the sexual blackmail business. That's how they operate. But operating at such a mass scale, level, and the Israelis are directly linked to this Jeffrey Epstein case. Well, that's mind-boggling, and that tells you that that's how you control. Sex and money has been the controlling, levers of if they are the controlling levers of how they're operating. So God save us all then.
Yeah, you have to be very careful. I mean, obviously, when sexual abuse comes up, we instantly emotionally stirred up to protect, because it's natural. We want to protect women from violence, and anyone from sexual violence or violence of any kind. But these stir up strong emotions. Unfortunately, we have to balance protecting women with being, unfortunately, cynical about accusations, at least of controversial figures like a Julian Assange. Now, that doesn't mean that we should allow them, we should also investigate any accusation against anybody, but we should apply a very strong critical lens. Someone like Russell Brand, I mean, he was very clearly a promiscuous guy. He's admitted this. But why did he become investigated 10 years later when he's turned over a new leaf, when he's no longer being promiscuous, when he's taken to meditation and celibacy and stop drugs and things like, and he's now reporting about corruption and doing quite a good job, actually. He's both entertaining and informative. He actually does have reveal some important topics, and he has a huge following. Oh, what a coincidence. Now we're going to come after him for sexual assault allegations. Two things can be true, but I don't know that, if there's truth to these. We just need to be very, very cynical. Unfortunately, now, if someone's accused, we need to look very closely who is making these accusations and why. I mean, they did it to Assange. And the other part of that is that Whitney Webb, there's another great journalist, you know her. She's a US journalist, and she's been doing a lot of stuff on Epstein. And she said, you know what? She wrote a book on Epstein, and she said they don't actually need Epstein anymore because she said that Israel owns most of the pornography websites in the world now. Just think about that. What does she mean? So why? Well, and especially now when you look at the UK is trying to enforce government ID for you to access the website, including OnlyFans. So what is this about? Is it about protecting children? They don't seem that interested in protecting children in Gaza or in Epstein's case. What are they more interested in? They're more interested in control. And so if you think about it, we're all living on Epstein Island now. Whatever websites you're going to, they're tracking, they're tracing. And some of you might be saying, well, but I'm nobody. They don't care. That's sort of, but you cannot sit back and allow these freedoms to be taken away, because even if you don't want to stand up and be a voice for justice, someone who does can be cut down with these with this type of abuse of power. So that's why, we have to defend freedom of speech and against censorship and protect online privacy. And, of course, there are things to weigh up. But Thomas Jefferson said it brilliantly. He said, those who sacrifice freedom for security deserve neither.
This is awesome, actually, Matt. Very interesting discussion, very controversial as well, contentious as well. Well, that's the way we are. That's what Voices of Dissent are for. And the highlight was that we are all living on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Wow. Now, finally, Matt, on a positive note, irrespective of this massive control, massive money, massive or mega blackmailing empire, honey trapping empire, sex and blackmail circuits, immense amount of political power, immense amount of media control. Even then, Palestine is a mainstream issue, and the Israelis do not feel very confident outside Israel in introducing themselves as the Israelis. So that's the real issue. They're complaining about it as well. How come? I was covering this just last week. I was covering this demonstration, the vigil by the National Union of Journalists in front of Whitehall and opposite 10 Downing Street, and there was a Ukrainian protest going on over there as well. But the size of the massive National Union of Journalists protest for Palestine, for the journalists killed in Gaza, that was massive. And they were mostly white British people there, and there is a white advantage definitely, but we're not saying that there was Middle Eastern or there was people, refugees were there. No, these were proper British, blue-blooded British people, standing there. So
Yeah.
the change in mindset is massive, irrespective of all that control. How do you explain that?
TikTok.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's TikTok and social media in general. But it really is. I mean, you can even hear US senators talking about this, the TikTok problem, back when they decided to ban it. People forget Joe Biden literally did ban TikTok, which is insane.
Well, Matt,
TikTok.
isn't that, and then isn't that an hypocrisy? Because TikTok is being blamed to have Chinese origins, all right? And
Mm,
the Chinese, it goes in the Chinese favor. It goes in the advantage of Chinese to uh, make a mockery out of the West, and uh, make them look like demons. The West make the Western government look like demons. Uh, I mean, it does give a lot of soft power, and it does give a lot of political and strategic advantage to the Chinese. Uh, because you're saying it's TikTok, right?
mm,
By spreading this point of view, and I am playing, I have to present you a counter argument. That is my job as a
mm,
journalist. Then,
mm,
then how
mm.
do you analyze that? Then, what do you say to that? Then,
Again, I think it comes back to what we keep coming back to, this good questions. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's important to ask this, because I hope there are some people um, on the other side looking at this and considering this. But I think that if you sacrifice your soft power in exchange for hard power, you're calcifying yourself, and you're gonna be smashed. People do not like tyranny. History shows it again and again. And I'm not advocating for a violent revolution. I do not. I advocate for a peaceful solidarity revolution. But of course, this idea, it's obviously not only TikTok, but all of the social media, and they're trying to control it, and that's why, they don't want it in the hands of Chinese. Really, it's partly that, of course, but it's more so that they want to control it. They want to be able to sort through in real time. Oh, this is trending. Free Palestine. No, no, no. Let's lower this down the search results. It's very clear that's what they're doing. They've said it, senators have said it at conferences that we have a TikTok problem. Free Palestine is the number one hashtag. What are we going to do? So
all
this
across,
also,
all across social media, not only
very,
TikTok.
exactly.
So
That's right. It's not only
I would
TikTok.
say,
Absolutely.
the sheer arrogance of the Israeli regime, and the sheer arrogance shown by the Israel, and the people over there, even right now, and the images coming out of Gaza, the way they strike you. I swear, Matt, I can't even look at them.
Yeah.
I feel ashamed to look at them and do nothing about it. I mean,
Mhm.
if you've got a heart,
Yeah.
if you've got a thinking mind, and if your heart is in the right place, there's no way in the world the images coming out are not going to move you. So I believe
Right.
that it's not only TikTok, and TikTok is being
Sure.
used as a tool for manipulation by the Chinese. This is what I believe. That's my personal opinion. But having said that, it is much more than TikTok. The images coming out from there, and the
Yeah.
sheer
Entirely.
arrogance at display by the Israelis. I mean,
Yeah.
that is what really, infuriates you. It makes you think. It makes you wonder, why are you supporting them? And with all due respect to the strategic community of the UK, I believe it mad that if you're sacrificing your soft power and you're exchanging it with the with so-called hard power or military force, in the long term, that is not a very good deal. You're not gonna benefit out of it. So,
Right.
final word.
Brilliant. No, I'm glad we agree on that, and I think the history books agree with us. Um, I just encourage our leaders to realize that they're selling our integrity which is so much more valuable than anything else. And I'm ashamed, and I'm very worried. And I think about leaving. I think about. I mean, Ireland is standing up. That's one country in Europe that is opposing the genocide. They've even called for a peacekeeping force from the UN to go to Gaza, and that seems needed. But I think that Palestine is a decisive issue that we must win to show them. This is a test now. They are testing us. Can they get away with this? As you say, the arrogance of it, to think that they can do this in front of the world. I think they miscalculated, I think, that they could control the mainstream, the legacy media, and get away with this. I'm not sure that they thought that social media would have such an impact as it has had. And absolutely, it's not only TikTok at all. I'm kind of partly joking there, but it's true, actually. And it's all the social media. And they're going to try and control that, and they are, which is why I say we need to look at decentralized platforms. But Gaza is a test for humanity. We have to save Gaza. We have to save Palestine. And I really believe in the Sumud flotilla, the international boats. They're about to very soon set sail, delivering aid. There's going to be too many boats, I believe, for Israel to actually stop, unless they want to bomb them all. But there are going to be famous people on these boats, like they did with Greta Thunberg. So I don't think they're going to be able to bomb them. This is going to be an international focus of these boats, and if they stop the boats, then this is going to be a huge scandal. Why are you not allowing this life-saving food to come to the shore? They're not doing anything wrong. We need to free Palestine, to free humanity, to show these corrupt powers it's not going to wash, no, and we need to preserve press freedom and freedom of speech. And I think that the Julian Assange case gave us a reason to be hopeful that we can achieve victory against the odds, against these huge powers that you mentioned, the legacy media, all the financial interests and the state powers behind it. They wanted Julian Assange so bad. He was the most wanted, and they wanted to chuck him in a solitary confinement for the rest of his life in America. If we had allowed that would have been an awful example, and we at least saved him. And we need to change the laws that they used to go for him, but we at least saved him. He's in Australia now with his family, free, with the sun on his face. So we need to do this for Imran Khan, and we need to do this for Palestine. And it's going to take some work. It's going to be difficult, but it can also be fun. And it's going to, it just, nothing feels better than actually taking some action, even if it's small. I promise you, those people sitting at home wondering what you can do. Think about what you can do, but don't think too long. Take some action. Doesn't matter too much. Just take some action. And we together, it all adds up together. There are like 7.5 billion of us, and only a couple of thousand of these, very privileged, powerful people trying to get away with murder. We can stop them easily together if we unite peacefully.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Matt O'Brien for you. And the hope for humanity, we have concluded, lies in freedom of speech and consensus rather than authoritarianism and enforcing the implementation of the decision of the top 1% of the world. Well, that's not going to bring peace and prosperity, not even to the top 1%. It'll only bring chaos, and chaos might be predictable in the short term, but it is definitely unpredictable and chaotic, as the name suggests, in the long term. So hope for humanity again is in freedom of speech and consensus. Thank you so very much, Matt O'Brien, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Soldiers Speak exclusive for you.
Thank you, Adil. Well done.
Thank you, Matt.
Well said.